Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Arabella Abandoned Doll. So Arabella is a Boros commander. She's a 2-mana 1/3 legendary artifact creature toy. And she says, whenever Arabella attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. So the obvious things to do with her are be an aggressive deck with as many small power 2 or less creatures as possible, and do everything that we can to enhance the damage on Arabella. So with that said, we're going to have a lot of beatdown related cards, and anything that would normally be a card that we might want to play that also happens to be a creature with power 2 or less is of course going to be more valuable than normal. So we have Adeline, Resplendent Cathar, which makes lots of tokens and beats down by itself. Agate Instigator, the new creature version of Impact Tremors. Anam Pakal, Thousandth Moon, which creates attacking creatures, giving us additional tokens. Caretaker's Talent, which we of course are primarily using for the draw ability, but which we can eventually level up to give all of our tokens +2. Dollmaker's Shop Porcelain Gallery also similarly creates 1/1 tokens and then makes our creatures very big when we unlock the Porcelain Gallery. Krenko Tin Street Kingpin, which again makes additional tokens. And Razorkin Needlehead, which is basically the red Orcish Bowmasters, of course not as good, but it's essentially doing the same thing, and is a power 2 creature. And then Serra Ascendant, which although it is not a power 2 or less creature because it will start off as a 6/6, it is good for beating down. Then over here in the card draw section, we of course have Auto Staples, Esper Sentinel, and the One Ring, but additionally we get to play cards like Welcoming Vampire, Mentor of the Meek, Enduring Innocence, Archivist of Ogma, and Skull Clamp, which is going to be particularly good in this deck, since we're spitting out tons of X1 tokens. Now, as far as combos go, we do have Dualcaster Mage Molten Duplication in order to combo in our Boros deck. If you're not particularly a fan of this combo, combos in general, or you just want to stick to winning with Arabella and the beatdown strategy, you could of course cut these. We have Delny to double the trigger on Arabella. You could also opt to play Roaming Throne as well. And then Reconnaissance, which is going to be particularly good. 0, remove an attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. So this will allow us to attack with Arabella and never have it get killed. So let's say all of our opponents have a creature that could block and kill Arabella in combat. You can use this so that you can attack with Arabella, get its trigger, and then use Reconnaissance to untap it. And this will apply to any of our creatures. So if we've got any creatures that we want to attack with in order to get attack triggers, but they would die in combat, we can just untap them and remove them from combat. Obviously, a little bit of haste is going to be nice with Arabella and all of our other creatures. So we've got Mass Hysteria, Arena of Glory, Rabbit Battery. Pretty straightforward lands, nothing much to see here. Obviously, we're going to want lots of protection. Our deck doesn't work so well when Arabella gets killed, so we're going to want lots of cards like Giver of Runes, Mother of Runes, Skrelv, which of course wind up being power 2 or less creatures and benefit towards Arabella. We also have additional protection like Flare of Fortitude, SWAT, Selfless Spirit, etc. Not too much ramp. Obviously, we're pretty limited on what we can play in the Boros deck, and playing 2 mana rocks is not really so great in helping out get our 2 mana Arabella. And so like many Boros decks, we're opting not to play so much ramp, but we're going to play a lot of Stax to counteract that, so we will get to that in the Stax section. Dusk to Dawn is worth mentioning. Destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, which for the most part will have most of our creatures survive while killing opponents' creatures. And then on the Aftermath side, returns all of our power 2 and less creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield. We of course have some removal, Leonin Relic Warder, Loran, Skyclave Apparition. Again, power 2 less creatures for Arabella. And then we get to the Stax section. So a Boros deck that is primarily built around beating down opponents is not really set up to combo super fast, which means we're going to want ways of slowing down the opponents so that our superior board can take over the game. So of course we've got our Rule of Law type effects, Archon of Emeria, Eidolon of Rhetoric, Aethersworn Canonist, to prevent our opponents from multicasting spells. We don't really need to multicast spells. We can just cast one Adeline or something and then slowly chip away at our opponents with beatdown creatures in Arabella. We're going to run our taxing effects like Thalia, Glow Rider, and Vryn Wingmare. We're going to run anti-artifact effects to stop our opponent's Mono Rocks from getting ahead. So Null Rod, Stony Silence, and Kataki, and these are some of the big reasons why we're not really running too many Mono Rocks ourselves. Anti-ETB card in Doorkeeper Thrall, Anti-Search with Aven Mind Sensor, and then Land Hate with Armageddon, Ravages of War, Magus of the Moon, and Blood Moon. A little bit of tutoring, Imperial Recruiter, Recruiter of the Guard, and it is worth noting that, of course, like any deck that's playing Stax cards, we oftentimes are forced to play anti-synergies. So for example, we have a Doorkeeper Thrall, but we also have some ETB effects like Imperial Recruiter, Recruiter of the Guard. These cards are going to be situational, so you're going to have to gauge what cards are in your hand, what cards do your opponents have access to. Are you going to be able to make use of your Stax effects in a way that punishes your opponents more than you, or benefits you more than it harms your ability to get abilities? And then finally, just some other tiny little creatures that didn't really fall in any specific category: Ocelot Pride and Loyal Apprentice, as ways of just generating more small creatures for Arabella. And with that, that's going to do it for Arabella Abandoned Doll in EDH.